Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving deep into Chapter 7 of The Emperor of Gladness. You shared this chapter, and the analysis piece, Memory Theater.
Wow, it really drags you into this space where memory just unravels and reality gets, well, let's just say flexible.
Exactly. It's incredibly potent, this part of the book. Aching, funny, tragic, and yeah, that description, disturbingly tender, really fits. It uses this backdrop of dementia, of caregiving, to explore something really fundamental about how we cope when, the ground disappears beneath us.
Right. So the mission here for this deep dive is kind of to pull out what's hiding in plain sight. What's the real cost of giving care? How does trauma blur that line between memory and, well, imagination?
And what does it actually mean to keep loving someone or just navigate life alongside them when their own reality starts to unravel? We'll see this mostly through Hai and Grazina, definitely.
But also through some other characters grappling with their own fractured realities. Yeah, and the chapter, it wastes no time. It just plunges us right in. Opens with this incredibly striking scene. Hai and Grazina, they're in her living room having these mock gunfights.
It's totally surreal. You've got Grazina Vitkus, his landlady. She's in her blue robe, nightgown on the, linoleum or carpet. But suddenly she's an enemy combatant.
And Hai, he shifts. He becomes Sergeant Pepper, 2nd Division, U.S. Infantry.
And this isn't just like fooling around. The details are so sharp, almost visceral. He shoots her with a Singer gun, and she doesn't just fall down.
No, she twitches, then rises up like a puppet on strings. And she's begging for her family back in some cellar behind human-sized jars of pickled radishes and beets.
And he keeps shooting her, the mouth, forehead, chest, her back while she's sweeping.
Yeah. But she fights back, too, that bit during the Dancing with the Stars commercial.
Oh, yeah. Pulls out her own pistol, a Walther P-38, apparently, from an icon pocket, shoots him in the chest.
And his response, he throws a bag of pretzels at her, unopened pretzels.
It's this bizarre mix, isn't it? Like real menace and just complete domestic absurdity.
And that other moment, the assassination from behind while he's eating breakfast, face planting in brain-colored oatmeal.
Ugh, yeah.
These aren't just random scenes. They build this feeling like they're playing at real life, but it's so much like hell it feels fake.
Feeling closer to death than they've ever been. The heat from their imaginary wounds comes out as steam. The intensity, even though it's staged, it feels real.
And that detail about Hai focusing on the mouth.
Yeah, that stuck with me. Described as the deepest wound he's ever seen, and linking it to how time opens, whatever goes through never returns the same.
Like the mouth itself is this portal for loss, for things vanishing into the past.
Which connects directly to that analysis you mentioned, framing this as trauma as theater. Because these fights, they weren't random.
Right. They started at Grazina's request, apparently, after Hai first pretended to be an army officer one night.
So it's not just madness, it's co-created. He figures out that deepening his voice, doing the Sergeant Pepper thing, actually helps when she slips into one of her episodes, when her eyes get that faraway look.
Exactly. The analysis calls it a spontaneous, therapeutic performance. It's like, think of it as improvisation, but tapping into something deeper than just logic.
Empathy over logic.
Yeah, reminiscent of trauma-informed care, where empathy overrides logic. So instead of trying to, correct her reality,
He joins her in it.
he enters her reality with empathy. He plays along.
Right. Not arguing with the delusion, but stepping inside it. It becomes this dream inside of an illusion, happening maybe 3 times a week.
Crouching among the floral furniture, but in their heads, they're somewhere else entirely.
An old dairy farm pasture, side of the road by a shelled village, a grove of pines.
And Grazina, she weaves in details from her past, right? Soviets taking Vilnius, Germans losing the Eastern Front, and Hai just nods as if this was obvious to him. He's participating.
And here's where it gets, really interesting. How he realizes the longer he keeps Sergeant Pepper going, the easier it was to manage Grazina's episodes. It wasn't about, curing anything. It was like having a portal into which he could usher her when the present burned away.
Wow, so it's a survival mechanism for both of them, really.
Exactly. He's not deceiving her. He's participating in this necessary fiction to help them both get through it.
But that line is so blurry, and the chapter shows how abruptly they snap back, and that it was over.
She just stops, looks around, as if somebody just called her name, and then moments later,
She's in the kitchen, setting out teacups, as though none of this happened.
the whiplash is intense. The house reappeared from behind their hallucinations, drab and musty as ever. It's like the analysis says, coming down from a high.
1 minute battlefield, next minute tea time.
And what's fascinating is that after these episodes, these really intense moments, Grazina often shares stories, real stories maybe, from her past.
Yeah, the analysis points out you're never quite sure where truth ends and, the telling begins, but the stories themselves, powerful stuff. Deep historical trauma.
Lithuania, her father the baker, bribing Nazis with rye loaves back in '39 while Germans smashed every window on the road.
And her watching, just 12 years old, with that mix of pride and sunken rage.
Chilling stuff. Not knowing what was happening in the ghettos, wishing they had left earlier, the Germans seeing them as just Slavs, slaves.
And then her mother turning Catholic, the bombs, boom, 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 she'd slap the table.
And her father's religion, not Catholicism, not Judaism.
Alcoholism. Yeah, dark humor cutting right through.
Then the escape from the Red Army in '44, the train to Germany, hoping for France, then London. Fear of the communists, property seized, families split, deportation to Stalin's camps.
More than one devil those days, she says. A rock and a hard place.
Which she follows up with that absolutely brutal comparison.
Oh, God, yeah. More like being crushed by 2 ball sacks filled with demon blood.
It's horrifying and just raw.
But amidst all that huge historical trauma, you get these flashes of, mundane regret, too. Missing a Gene Pitney concert for a VFW fundraiser.
Right, the passage of time marked by Duran Duran or whatever. These small losses mixed in with the massive ones.
And just when you get pulled into these stories, her memory issues flare up again. I'm tired, Labas. Did I sleep last night?
I don't remember. The past and present just constantly colliding, dissolving.
Okay, so then the chapter just yanks us somewhere completely different.
Yeah, a total shift away from that intense internal world into, well, a different kind of absurdity, the whole market workplace.
And that contrast feels really important.
Definitely. It shows Hai's life isn't just the caregiving, the wartime fantasy. He's got this job, this other life, interacting with Maureen, Russia, Wayne, BJ, Sony.
The drive-thru, the butcher block, the back room. And this world is just as bizarre, just in a different way.
Totally. Like Russia's Bugs Bunny tattoo that everyone insists looks like, something else.
Right. And his whole explanation about Eminem and 8 Mile.
Or BJ's birthmark. She says it's a music note from God, because wrestling is 90% music.
But everyone else sees Mexico or Florida or a chemical burn. It's all about these weird competing interpretations of reality, even in the everyday stuff.
And the big event here is Peace Treaty Day. This food exchange with Panetta, their arch-rival.
Maureen's description of Panetta is just perfect.
Oh, it's brilliant. The notoriously snooty vibe, thinking they're better because they have fucking salads.
The rich girls from the Heights in their Uggs and puffer vests laughing at you.
The food being filthy, fake healthy, conscious crisps that make you want to punch a toddler.
And the employees in their nutmeg aprons, like it's a farmer's market, not a franchise next to Walmart.
This whole corporate rivalry, it's like another kind of performance, isn't it? Another theater.
Totally. And the drive there with Maureen, because Hai failed his test 4 times.
Yeah, she offers him gin from her flask. 3 sips, and my knees feel 35 again.
And connects his failed tests to her failed marriage. 5's a lucky number. I divorced my husband after 5 years. It just adds these layers.
And then on this drive, Maureen goes somewhere else entirely. Another fabricated reality.
Right, conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Declares herself a philosopher.
And just lays it all out. The Earth is hollow.
Entrance in Antarctica. All roads lead to Antarctica, literally and figuratively.
It's all a model, a simulation in a giant display case.
Controlled by reptilians, living underground.
Accessed via Antarctica, of course, feeding on negative energy. Humanity is a crop.
And world leaders are in on it. Every president since Kennedy, the Pope, Dick Cheney, they all visit Antarctica to make deals.
Some leaders are actually lizards in disguise.
Yeah.
Evolved from dinosaurs.
It's this incredibly elaborate, fantastical worldview. But what's really striking is Hai's reaction.
Right. Despite how completely wild it sounds, he finds it hard not to believe her. It even makes sense in a way, like how taxes worked.
He feels alive inside pieces of mistakes that gravity had collected into a life raft called the present, just heading toward whatever iceberg lay ahead. It's like another way someone is grappling with a reality that feels broken, finding a weird kind of logic somewhere else.
And in that moment, talking about hollow earths and lizard people, there's this unexpected connection. She touches his knee.
Yeah, with a gentleness he didn't expect, and that's when he notices the watch.
The Star Wars watch. Powder blue bands, Han Solo face, Chewie heads for markers. Doesn't work anymore.
Belonged to her son, Paul.
And this just opens up another layer of cost, of loss. Paul died of leukemia back in '99. Bad blood, she said starkly.
And then that gut punch detail, his deadbeat dad used the same phrase, bad blood, about Paul having Maureen's temper.
What a joke, she says. Just layers of pain.
Hyde tries the standard, sorry.
And she just cuts him off. Don't say stupid shit like that. Mocks the Jell-O mold platitudes.
The detail about Paul loving Han Solo, thinking he looked like a better version of his dad.
Watching Empire Strikes Back over and over. That shared ritual, it makes the loss so specific.
And the cost is ongoing. Still paying medical bills. Sleeping on the kitchen floor in a sleeping bag to save money.
Her grief isn't abstract. It's crushing her, financially, physically. It's another angle on that cost of care, or the cost of past caring, maybe.
So, okay, back to Panetta. They arrive, deal with the slightly absurd corporate stuff.
The manager with the Pringles mustache, insisting on pain au chocolat, the unavailable croissants, the be your best self, biodegradable boxes.
And then Maureen gets this brief moment of lightness.
Yeah, Nacho, the Cisco driver.
Her reaction is instant. Giddy, fixing her hair. Nacho.
He's described vividly, cowboy shirt, sweaty, skin like good scotch, calls her mama.
And there's this clear physical connection. He pulls her close.
She calls him a friend with benefits, a gas station 10 with a good heart. Jokes he invented nachos just to get in my panties.
And High's deadpan. Guess it worked.
They walk out snuggled, giddy, just a quick escape into simple connection.
But then it's back to Home Market. Unloading the Panetta boxes, mostly salad. Just 4 tiny muffins. It's a scam.
Sitting out back on milk crates, Maureen confirms her encounter with Nacho. It's got a bed, shows High the joint, and then the conversation drops again.
Back to the grief, back to the conspiracies.
I just thought it would mean something, that it has meaning when somebody dies, that it leads to something.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. Her voice sounds buried.
That emptiness after her son's death.
And how it twists everything. And the only thing that's different is that I can't stand flowers now. All that color just pisses me off.
Beauty becomes anger because it feels meaningless next to that loss.
And then she leaps right back to the conspiracies. The Hollow Earth, the simulation, the reptilians farming negative energy.
It's fascinating how the chapter links that unbearable, senseless loss with this really elaborate framework of control and hidden meaning.
Right. If the real world is this random and cruel, maybe a world run by lizard people farming bad vibes.
Yeah.
Maybe that makes a perverse kind of sense. It imposes some order, some reason onto the chaos of grief.
And High's reaction again, hard not to believe her, makes sense in a way, like how taxes worked. It just highlights how conventional reality can feel just as bizarre when you're deep in pain.
The Star Wars watch on her wrist, just sitting there. A quiet reminder of why her view of the cosmos is so skewed.
Which brings us to that moment High asks, where do you think he is in her world? With the energy and lizards and stuff.
And her answer just cuts through everything. No lizards, no simulation, just my baby's with God.
Looking right at him, willing him to believe it. Like his belief could make it true for her.
And High, looking at the rusted power plant, just says quietly, right, that makes sense. Not agreeing, maybe, but acknowledging the need for something, some hope.
And the chapter ends with that incredibly tender moment. Back at Home Market, Maureen shares the Panetta croissants.
Echoing her earlier line about flowers, sometimes flowers just make you want to quit.
And High, handing her the pastry, using the manager's fancy French. Have some chocolate pain, he says. You earned it.
Chocolate pain? I mean, yeah. That kind of sums it all up, doesn't it?
Perfect phrase. And she laughs, flakes on her lips, looking at the pastry and says, those fucking lizards, they don't know shit about this.
That analysis piece really nails this ending. Heart-wrenching, but avoids sentimentality, letting you sit with discomfort, confusion, and care.
Calling the chapter beautiful and horrifying, tender and absurd, a small battlefield of love in a house full of ghosts.
It just pulls all those threads together, doesn't it? The relentless cost of caregiving, of loss, the way people use fantasy Sergeant Pepper, reptilian overlords as survival tools.
And those enduring, sometimes really painful ways love and connection still happen, even when reality itself feels like it's crumbling.
So what does this all mean for you listening? We've seen how memory, trauma, grief, they aren't just passive things you carry. They actively shape your present, sometimes needing you to create entirely new realities just to cope.
Yeah, this deep dive really shows that immense emotional toll, the wild, complex ways people find to survive, and those defiant little moments of sweetness found in shared absurdity and shared, well, chocolate pain.
Which really leaves you with a question, doesn't it? If reality can be as fluid as a living room battlefield or a world run by underground lizards, where do you draw the line between creating necessary fictions to cope and maybe losing connection.
And what forms does your own tragic imaginations take when you need it to survive?